What if Star Trek's defining technological metaphor isn't the warp drive or the replicator, but the holodeck? Deep Space Nine did a lot to give Roddenberry's vision a harder edge, a more realpolitik take on the world first presented in the original series, perhaps most bluntly with the introduction of Section 31. All of a sudden, the open, enlightened, always noble and fair Federation had a darker undertone.
I can't believe the Federation condones this kind of activity.
Its own clandestine intelligence and black ops outfit doing shady things that wouldn't fit with Starfleet's image. For good or ill, Trek has never been quite the same since, and the Federation isn't quite as warm and fuzzy as it often seems. Some will argue that Section 31 isn't part of the Federation, but rather a rogue group operating outside of any legal framework or oversight, loose cannons acting on their own. That doesn't hold up.
Section 31 aren't part of the Federation. They're a rogue organization.
Don't split hairs with me, Doctor.
First, it ignores how outsiders see their actions.
Section 31 isn't part of Starfleet intelligence.
They are Federation citizens working to advance your interests. That makes them your responsibility.
Put another way, if the CIA topples a government, the rest of the world knows it was the Americans and acts accordingly. It doesn't matter that Congress didn't vote on it. When Section 31 acts, it's an act of the Federation as far as everyone else is concerned. But more than that, in the second appearance of Section 31, they're operating in coordination with Starfleet to interfere in Romulan internal politics.
And how long have you worked for Section 31?
I don't.
Oh, just a temporary alliance, is it?
Something like that.
While there's some contradictions and ambiguity going forward about just how independent or out of control Section 31 is, it's a clear, if not explicitly acknowledged, part of the Federation's intelligence services.
Starfleet Command doesn't acknowledge its existence, but they don't deny it either. They simply said they'd look into it and get back to me.
When?
They didn't say.
That sounds like a cover-up to me.
But there are a lot of inconsistencies, which track with what was happening here in the real world over the decades of Trek's various iterations. Section 31 is first introduced into the canon in 1998. Our time, not Trek timeline, with the DS9 episode Inquisition. It's explained as having been created with the Federation.
Section 31 was part of the original Starfleet Charter.
But that was 200 years ago. Are you telling me you've been working on your own ever since? Without specific orders? Accountable to nobody but yourselves?
You make it sound so ominous.
Enterprise, post 9/11, contradicts this, having Section 31 operating well before the founding of the Federation, leading to some curious in-world implications that we'll look at in a bit. Partly it's reflective of the jarring cultural shift of those years. The final season of Enterprise, well into the GWOT era, normalizes Section 31 as just a clandestine intelligence service. The ship's tactical officer, Malcolm Reed, worked for Section 31 before joining Starfleet.
We have an assignment for you.
I wasn't aware that I was still a part of your section.
Suggesting that it's less a rogue cabal and more a government agency with at least some back and forth with the regular military. By the time Discovery aired in 2017, the idea of nebulous intelligence agencies monitoring communications, meddling in international politics, and occasionally disappearing troublesome people was an accepted part of our political reality as much as a trope of dystopian fiction. The absence of a shady spy network then would have seemed as jarring as inserting it did in the 90s Trek. The recent Section 31 movie, the less said about that the better, takes what started as a troubling crack in the Federation and turns it into a sort of space G.I. Joe, a group of outlandish misfits out to save the galaxy. But it's mostly in that DS9 era that Section 31 is interesting. Up to that point, the Federation was an outlier amongst the civilizations it had contact with. It was a multicultural entity surrounded by ethnostates. It was open, trusting, and a bit naive in its dealings with foes like the Klingons, Romulans, Cardassians, and so on. And while its enemies had shady black ops organizations like the Tal Shiar or the Obsidian Order to do dirty deeds in the shadows, the Federation was always above board and honest in its dealings. Until all of a sudden it wasn't. Dropping Section 31 in makes those other powers look like amateurs. Everyone knows they're holding knives behind their backs while they smile, but with the Federation, the smile is believed. They fall for it. And Section 31 is so secret that it's comparable to a protective breakaway civilization, less rogue CIA and more Stargate Command, a well-supported but compartmentalized organization not only protecting the people from a dangerous universe, but insulating them from awareness of the extent of that danger. The Federation stops being this utopian society that always wins through sheer faith in its own goodness and doing the right thing, and becomes instead a carefully tended and protected garden. For some, that's ruining Star Trek with cynicism. I think it suggests that it's possible to be idealistic and honest in a world that doesn't always respect that. It just requires finding the balance between not losing sight of the real dangers while also not being consumed by fighting them.
Pull your head out of the sand and take a look around, Doctor. These are not nice people we're dealing with here.
The Romulans and Cardassians in particular become cautionary tales of taking it too far. Examples where the Guardians came out of the shadows and took power, turning their entire society into sentries on the wall at the expense of the garden inside. The Federation does a better job of compartmentalizing the demands of survival to allow for living. The Federation starts to look like a carefully propped up illusion for the majority of its citizens, a holodeck society in a sense. One that only starts to crack when it faces existential threats from outside, most notably the Borg and the Dominion. But with the Borg, the threat came in brief, sharp shocks. Starfleet got its ass handed to it at Wolf 359, but after defeating that Borg attack on Earth, the heart of the Federation, they had some breathing time to assess and distance from it. It had second-order effects, most notably forcing the treaty with the Cardassians, leading to that whole Maquis conflict. But by the time Picard was planning to use a captured Borg drone as an attack vector to break down the Borg collective, there was some distance. The Borg were again a known but not immediate threat. And it's noteworthy that the Borg drone, Hugh, had the same destabilizing, crippling effect on the collective when his sense of individuality was propagated through their network that the planned attack was expected to have in the first place. Picard got to make the right decision according to higher Starfleet values while still getting the results of going through with the attack. Like any destabilization op, it had some serious unanticipated downsides, but blowback comes with the territory. Lore and his band of Borg were the next sharp shock that had to be dealt with, but it's notable that Picard was able to accomplish what he set out to do in spite of, not because of, doing the right thing with Hugh. The Dominion War was different, a sustained conflict across multiple theaters. There was no time between battles to settle back into that Federation idealism. It just kept going day after day, fighting an enemy determined to conquer and patient enough to do it a piece at a time. And that consistent, pervasive threat forced some brutal pragmatism, perhaps best illustrated in the DS9 episode In the Pale Moonlight, which notably follows immediately after the introduction of Section 31 in Inquisition. This is a great episode, so if you're watching Deep Space Nine for the first time, maybe stop the video here and come back later. Spoilers for a show from the last millennium ahead. The Federation needs allies against the Dominion, which is a threat to the entire Alpha Quadrant after all. But there's a lot of bad blood between the Romulans and the Federation. Enough for them to sign a non-aggression pact with the Dominion and look the other way while their territory is used to launch attacks.
I can't believe the Romulans allow them to violate their territory so brazenly. Why do they get away with it?
The Romulans have a treaty of non-aggression and friendship with the Dominion, so they're willing to turn a blind eye to almost anything in the name of friendship.
How to make the Romulans switch sides? Well, obviously they're next, but they need proof of intent, not just an argument. The fruitless search for that proof quickly leads to the obvious solution.
If you want to guarantee that we obtain evidence of a Dominion plot to attack the Romulans, I suggest that we manufacture that evidence ourselves.
Now, this whole operation has no Section 31 involvement. Sisko and Garrick cooked this up on their own. Garrick was formerly with Cardassia's Obsidian Order. Sisko, a Starfleet officer, brings in an outside consultant to falsify documents and set up a political earthquake in the Romulan Empire. But he's not going rogue with this.
You realize I can't authorize a thing like this on my own. I have to clear it with Starfleet Command.
Of course, but I suspect that with the fall of Beta Z, they'll be ready to do whatever it takes to bring the Romulans into the war.
This is really the crucial piece here. Maybe Section 31 isn't that much of an outlier after all.
It's a fake!
Of course, the forgery is discovered and the Romulan senator vows to expose the Federation's duplicity, but his shuttle explodes while leaving a diplomatic conference, and all evidence conveniently points to the Dominion.
And the more the Dominion protests its innocence, the more the Romulans will believe they're guilty, because it's exactly what the Romulans would have done in their place.
The Romulans are outraged. They renounce the treaty and they go to war with the Dominion. Mission accomplished.
That's why you came to me. Isn't it, Captain? Because you knew I could do those things that you weren't capable of doing.
For some, this whole arc undermines the idealism of Star Trek. Whether Section 31 meddling in Romulan politics, Sisko doing the same with tacit approval from Starfleet, or the degenerative disease introduced into the Dominion's founders, yes, by Section 31, but once done, it's used as the war-winning leverage by the Federation.
The Federation Council considered giving the founders the cure. Then they decided against it.
Then they're abetting genocide.
I don't condone what Section 31 did, but the founders started this war, not us.
The Federation finds ways to set its idealism aside when it becomes untenable.
The Federation claims to abhor Section 31's tactics, but when they need the dirty work done, they look the other way. It's a tidy little arrangement, wouldn't you say?
While Star Trek generally depicts this utopian techno-liberalism where we've solved our problems with technology and achieved both abundance and meaningful purpose for everyone, it also acknowledges that that kind of openness, honest idealism, liberalism, you could say, isn't for everyone. It's for your in-group. It works among friends, even amongst opponents that accept the basic values despite having disagreements about other things. But it's not universal. If you treat people that want to kill you like they're your friends and partners, they'll probably kill you. That's why the Federation, whether Section 31 or Starfleet or Sisko and a Cardassian hatchet man, can do some damn distasteful things to protect the society that finds those things distasteful.
But the most damning thing of all, I think I can live with it.
Being the good guy doesn't mean being a naive sap. It means recognizing the disconnect between ideals and reality and doing what you can to make the latter as close to the former as you can under the circumstances.
This is a huge victory for the good guys. This may even be the turning point of the entire war.
But that's DS9 Section 31. Enterprise has Section 31 operating on Earth years before the Federation's founding, which casts all of Trek in a new light. Which of course fits with the time. The early GWOT era had everyone thinking about intel agencies hunting sleeper cells and shady plots afoot all the time. But looking at it in terms of the implication in Trek world, it's more than that. Why is it that every Federation ship we see is built on that saucer and nacelles layout, the distinctive human ship design? Those Federation ships have Vulcan or Andorian crew members, but we never see any Vulcan-designed Federation ships. Obviously, it's about giving the audience visual cues to follow what's going on, and often about being able to reuse expensive models. But let's think about it in terms of that world for a moment. It's not new to point out that the Federation looks like a human hegemony.
The Federation is no more than a Homo sapiens-only club.
Present company accepted, of course.
Whether the human-designed ships, the capital on Earth, there can be non-human admirals and even Federation presidents, but Earth is the heart of the Federation. We know it, the Borg know it, the Federation people know it. Section 31, predating the Federation, makes me wonder if that Earth-based, human-centric agency not only protects Federation interests through intelligence gathering and the odd assassination, but more fundamentally human interests with the ultimate soft power program of turning potential rivals into junior partners. Was the entire conclusion of Enterprise, with Archer foiling the plot of Terra Prime terrorists and their anti-alien agenda before bringing the Vulcans, Andorians, and Tellarites together with humans under a grand unified coalition, an epic psyop to secure Earth and human cultural dominance? In which case, the Romulans are amateurs and the Klingons don't even know the game. It would explain why there was no big contingent of Vulcan ships at Wolf 359, for example. The Vulcans very logically hitched their wagon to the strongest horse and had their military capacity largely incorporated into that of the Federation. After all, why try to be the top power yourself when you can reap the benefits of top-tier power projection without having to pay for it? Starfleet as Space NATO with Earth as America footing the bill. Personally, I prefer the DS9 backstory, that Section 31 was created with the founding of the Federation to be a secret organization working in the background to do the things that are always unpleasant but sometimes necessary. A way of preserving the core principles of the Federation by insulating them both from outside threats and internal corruption. Would it work? I doubt it. Centers of power are like tumors. They grow. But the point of Star Trek was never to give us a blueprint for structuring society, but to remind us that a better future is possible. And achieving it requires a balance of idealism and pragmatism. And from that perspective, Section 31 is consistent with what Trek has always said about humanity. We have a dark and vicious aspect, and we need it sometimes, but also need to compartmentalize it, not let it dominate. It's part of Trek's optimism that it can be acknowledged, worked into the lore, without undoing everything else. I'd like to see a Section 31 show set during the Dominion War, concurrent with Deep Space Nine, and looking at the conflict from that perspective. Or rather, I'd like to have seen it back then. New Trek is its own thing, and I mostly ignore it. Computer, end program. Keep the rock, I'm leaning on it.